I stood frozen outside my childhood home, my hands gripping the birthday decorations I had bought for my mother's surprise party. Through the living room window, I watched my father, Marcus, wrapped in a passionate embrace with my Aunt Sarah on the very couch where we used to watch family movies together. The betrayal hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. My trusted aunt, my beloved father, destroying everything we had built as a family. Mom would arrive in less than an hour, expecting celebration and love, completely unaware that her marriage had become a lie. My hands shook as I fumbled with my keys, the birthday decorations falling to the porch as I pushed through the front door. The sound of my entrance sent them scrambling apart like guilty teenagers caught by parents. "Evan, what are you doing here so early?" Marcus demanded, his face flushed red as he straightened his disheveled shirt. Sarah cowered behind the kitchen counter, her lipstick smeared and her hair a mess. "I came to set up for Mom's party. Remember Mom, your wife of 23 years. The words came out harsher than I intended, but the rage building in my chest made it impossible to speak calmly. Sarah began crying, mascara streaming down her cheeks. "Evan, please, you don't understand. It just happened. We never meant for this." "Just happened," I laughed bitterly. "How long has this been going on?" Marcus stepped forward, his jaw set in that stubborn way I remembered from childhood arguments. "2 years, if you must know. And before you get all righteous, your mother and I have been having problems for a long time. 2 years. The number hit me like a physical blow. 2 years of family dinners where Sarah sat at our table smiling at my mother. 2 years of holidays where she hugged Mom and called her sister. 2 years of lies. You need to leave, Evan. Sarah and I need to figure this out before your mother gets here," Marcus said, moving toward me with threatening body language. "Figure what out? How to keep lying to her?" I stood my ground, my engineering training kicking in, as I tried to process this logically. But there was nothing logical about watching your family implode. That's when we heard the car door slam outside. Mom was early. Oh God, Sarah whispered frantically, trying to fix her appearance in the hallway mirror. The front door opened, and Linda walked in carrying a grocery bag, her face lit up with the excitement of someone expecting a wonderful surprise. Instead, she walked into a war zone. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut, and her smile faded immediately. "What's going on here? Why does everyone look like someone died?" she asked, setting down her bag and looking between the three of us. I looked at Marcus, giving him one last chance to come clean. He stared at the floor, the coward choosing silence over honesty. "Mom, I'm sorry you have to find out this way, but Dad and Aunt Sarah have been having an affair for 2 years." The color drained from Linda's face so quickly I thought she might faint. Her hand went to her chest and she started breathing rapidly. "That's not true. That can't be true. Sarah, tell me he's lying," she pleaded, turning to her sister with desperate eyes. Sarah couldn't even meet her gaze. "Linda, I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to get hurt." The admission hit Linda like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, gasping for air, her hand clutching her chest. I can't breathe. "Mom," I rushed to her side as she collapsed into the armchair, her face pale and sweaty. "Call 911. I shouted at Marcus, but he stood there paralyzed. I grabbed my phone and dialed while trying to keep Mom conscious. "My chest hurts so bad," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Why would they do this to me?" The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, quickly assessing that Linda was having a severe panic attack complicated by chest pains. They loaded her onto a stretcher while I gathered her purse and followed them to the hospital. Marcus rode in his own car and Sarah had simply vanished. At the hospital, Dr. Patterson explained that the shock had triggered stress-induced cardiac complications. Linda's blood pressure had spiked dangerously high, and they needed to keep her for observation and treatment. This kind of emotional trauma can cause real physical damage, the doctor warned. She'll need ongoing cardiac monitoring and stress management therapy. While Linda slept under sedation, Marcus paced the waiting room like a caged animal. "This is your fault, Evan. If you had just kept your mouth shut, we could have handled this properly. My fault you're the one who decided to sleep with your wife's sister in her own home. You don't know what it's been like. Your mother has been distant for years. Sarah understands me. Sarah understands your wallet, you mean? Marcus's face went white. What's that supposed to mean? I've seen the credit card bills, Dad. All those charges at expensive restaurants and jewelry stores, the cash withdrawals. Did you think I wouldn't notice when I helped Mom with the household budget? He slumped into a chair, suddenly looking older than his 52 years. Sarah's been going through a rough time. She needed support. What kind of support requires $5,000 at a casino last month? The shock on his face told me he had no idea about Sarah's gambling problem. That's impossible. She told me that money was for her apartment deposit. Wake up, Dad, she's been using you. When Linda woke up 6 hours later, the first thing she asked for was the phone book to find a divorce lawyer. The second thing she asked for broke my heart even more. Evan, sweetheart, can you check on the insurance? I'm worried about these medical bills. I called our insurance company from the hospital payphone and received devastating news. Our family policy had been canceled 3 months ago for non-payment of premiums. Marcus had been using the premium money to fund his affair with Sarah. The climactic twist that ended this nightmare day was discovering that not only were we facing Linda's unexpected medical bills without insurance coverage, but we were also completely financially exposed for any future medical needs. Marcus had prioritized his affair over his wife's health coverage. As I hung up the phone and looked at my mother lying in that hospital bed betrayed by her husband and sister, I realized this was just the beginning of a much deeper destruction than any of us could have imagined. 3 months after that devastating night, our family home felt like a museum of broken dreams. Linda had filed for divorce and was slowly recovering from her cardiac episode, though she still needed medication to manage her blood pressure. The legal proceedings revealed the true scope of Marcus's financial betrayal. I discovered that while I had been focused on my final year of engineering school, my father had been systematically dismantling our family's financial security. He had taken out a second mortgage on our house without telling Linda, using the money to pay off Sarah's mounting gambling debts and credit card bills. $67,000. Linda whispered, staring at the bank statement spread across the kitchen table. He borrowed $67,000 against our home to pay for her addiction. The foreclosure notice had arrived that morning, giving us 90 days to come up with the overdue payments or lose the house I had grown up in. Linda's part-time job at the local library wouldn't even cover the utilities, let alone catch up on a second mortgage she never knew existed. My relationship with Jessica, my girlfriend of 3 years, began crumbling under the pressure. We had planned to move in together after graduation, but I couldn't abandon my mother to deal with this mess alone. Evan, you're obsessing over this, Jessica said during one of our increasingly tense phone conversations. Your parents' marriage problems aren't your responsibility. It's not just marriage problems, Jess. They destroyed my college fund. They destroyed my mother's health. They're about to make her homeless. And what about us? What about our future? You haven't talked about anything else in months. She was right, but I couldn't explain how watching your family disintegrate makes everything else seem trivial. Every conversation, every plan for the future felt meaningless when my mother was taking pills to keep her heart from racing every time someone mentioned Sarah's name. The situation became even more complicated when Marcus moved in with Sarah temporarily. According to neighborhood gossip, they had rented a furnished apartment across town, paid for with money that should have been keeping our house out of foreclosure. Linda tried to maintain her dignity throughout the divorce proceedings, but the constant stress was taking its toll. She had lost 20 pounds and developed an anxious habit of checking the locks on all the doors multiple times before bed. I keep thinking Sarah might come back to take something else. She confided in me one evening as we sorted through legal documents. I know that sounds paranoid, but I never thought she was capable of what she's already done. I was helping Linda organize financial records for her lawyer when she found a hidden credit card statement that Marcus had apparently forgotten about. The charges painted a picture of lavish spending that made my stomach turn. Expensive dinners, jewelry purchases, weekend hotel stays, even a $3,000 payment to a fertility clinic. A fertility clinic? Linda's voice was barely a whisper. They were trying to have a baby. Before I could process the implications of that discovery, my phone rang. It was Marcus calling for the first time since the hospital incident. "Evan, I need to talk to you. Can you meet me at the diner on 5th Street? Against my better judgment, I agreed. Linda begged me not to go, but I needed to hear what he had to say for myself. Marcus looked terrible when I arrived. His usually neat appearance had deteriorated into wrinkled clothes and stubble. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he wasn't sleeping well. "Sarah's pregnant," he announced without preamble. The words hit me like a truck. "Congratulations. I'm sure Mom will be thrilled to know you're expanding the family that you destroyed." "It's twins," he continued, ignoring my sarcasm. "Due in 4 months, boys." "What do you want from me, Dad?" A baby shower invitation. He leaned forward across the table, his expression desperate. "I want you to understand that this changes everything. Sarah needs financial support now. She can't work in her condition. And you're telling me this because I had to liquidate your college fund to put down a deposit on a bigger apartment and pay for her medical expenses." The diner suddenly felt too small, too hot. My college fund, 4 years of careful saving from summer jobs and birthday money gone to pay for my father's pregnant mistress. You had no right to touch that money? I'm your father. Everything in this family belongs to me until you're 25, according to the account terms. That money was for my education. Your education will have to wait. I have responsibilities now. I stood up to leave, but he grabbed my arm. "Evan, wait. There's something else. Sarah wants to meet with you." "Absolutely not. She feels terrible about how everything happened. She wants to make amends." I pulled my arm free and walked out of the diner, leaving Marcus sitting alone with his justifications and excuses. 2 weeks later, Jessica called with news that completed the destruction of everything I had planned for my future. "I've been accepted to the graduate program at Northwestern." She said, her voice carefully neutral. "It's a full scholarship for my master's in psychology." "That's in Chicago. That's 8 hours away." "I know. Evan, I've been thinking about us, about everything that's happening with your family." My heart sank as I heard the tone in her voice. "You're breaking up with me." "I can't do this anymore. I can't compete with your family's drama for your attention. And honestly, I don't think you're ready for the kind of relationship I need." "Jess, please. Things will get better once the divorce is final." When will it get better? When your mom's house gets foreclosed? When your dad has more kids to ignore? When Sarah decides to cause more problems? I couldn't answer because I didn't know. "I'm leaving next month," she said softly. "I'm sorry, Evan, I really am." The climactic twist that shattered any remaining hope I had for rebuilding my life came the next day. Sarah called me directly, somehow having gotten my number. "Evan, please don't hang up. I know you hate me, but I need to talk to you about something important." "I have nothing to say to you." "It's about your college money. I know Marcus took it and I want to make it right. I have a business proposition that could help both of us." "I'm hanging up now." "Wait, I know you think I'm just a homewrecker, but I'm actually a very successful entrepreneur. I have connections that could get you into a program that would make your engineering degree worth more than any traditional college could offer." Despite my better judgment, I listened. "I have investors who are looking for young engineers to partner with on construction projects. Real money, real opportunities. All you have to do is help me and Marcus get through this transition period." "What kind of help?" "Just be supportive. Help convince your mother to be reasonable about the divorce settlement. These babies are going to be your half-brothers after all." The manipulation was so blatant it was almost impressive. Sarah was trying to use my own conscience against me while painting herself as some kind of business mentor. I hung up without another word, But the seed of an idea had been planted. Not the idea she intended, but something far more dangerous for her future plans. If Sarah wanted to play games with my family's lives, she was about to learn that I had inherited more than just my father's stubborn streak. I had also inherited my mother's patience and ability to plan for the long term. The twins she was carrying might be innocent victims in this mess. But Sarah herself was about to discover that destroying my family had consequences she never saw coming. 8 months after discovering the affair, Sarah gave birth to twin boys at Riverside General Hospital. Marcus called me with the news, his voice a mixture of exhaustion and forced excitement. They're healthy, 7 pounds each. She named them Armani and Bentley. The names told me everything I needed to know about Sarah's priorities. Even her newborn sons were branded with her materialistic obsessions. How are you handling the financial pressure? I asked, genuinely curious about how a man who had already destroyed one family's finances planned to support twin infants. It's tough, Marcus admitted. The apartment rent is $1,500 a month, and now we need cribs, car seats, formula. Sarah can't breastfeed because of complications. What about your business? There was a long pause. I've had to let 2 employees go. Lost the Henderson contract last week because I missed 3 meetings. Sarah needed me at home. Marcus's plumbing business had been his pride for 15 years. He had built it from nothing into a company that employed 6 people and serviced half the county. Hearing that it was falling apart didn't bring me the satisfaction I expected. Linda was still recovering from her own financial and emotional trauma. The divorce proceedings had dragged on for months, with Marcus fighting every settlement proposal his lawyer couldn't afford to contest properly. He's trying to claim that the second mortgage was a joint decision, Linda's attorney explained during one of our meetings. Even though you have proof he forged your signature on the documents. The legal battle was draining what little resources we had left. Linda had been forced to take a second job cleaning offices at night just to pay for groceries and her heart medication. I was working 30 hours a week at a construction company while trying to finish my delayed degree through night classes. The engineering program that should have been completed months ago now stretched ahead of me like an impossible mountain to climb. That's when I received an unexpected visitor. Sarah appeared at my apartment door on a Tuesday evening, looking polished despite having given birth just 6 weeks earlier. She wore an expensive coat and carried a designer handbag that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Hello, Evan, may I come in?" "Absolutely not. I understand you're angry, but I have something important to discuss, something that could help both of us." Against every instinct screaming in my head, I opened the door. Sarah walked into my small apartment and immediately began surveying the space with obvious disdain. "This place is rather cramped, isn't it? A talented young man like you should have better accommodations." "What do you want, Sarah?" She sat down on my second-hand couch and crossed her legs, the picture of confidence despite being in enemy territory. "I want to apologize for how everything happened. Your mother didn't deserve to get hurt the way she did. But you did it anyway. Love makes people do crazy things, Evan. I never intended for Linda to have a heart episode. That's been eating at me for months." The calculated sympathy in her voice made my skin crawl, but I let her continue. "I also know that Marcus took your college money, and I feel partially responsible for that. I want to make it right." "How?" Sarah opened her purse and pulled out a business card. "I have connections in the construction industry. Real estate development commercial projects are the kind of work that pays serious money for engineers with the right recommendations." The business card read Pinnacle Development Group with an address in the expensive part of downtown. I know the owner personally. He's always looking for young engineers who are hungry and willing to work hard. One phone call from me could get you an interview that would change your life. "What's the catch?" "No catch. I just want peace between our families. Marcus is struggling to handle the twins and keep his business afloat. A little support from you would mean the world to him." "Support how?" "Nothing dramatic. Just don't poison your mother against him in the divorce proceedings. Maybe encourage her to be reasonable about the settlement." The manipulation was breathtaking in its audacity. Sarah was trying to get me to sabotage my own mother's financial future in exchange for a job interview. And if I say no, Sarah's friendly mask slipped slightly. Then you can keep struggling in this little apartment while your father's business fails and your half-brothers grow up in poverty. Is that really what you want? My half-brother's poverty would be the direct result of their parents' choices, not mine. Their parents' choices, yes. But children don't choose their parents, do they? She stood up and moved closer to me. Think about it, Evan. Those boys are going to need a strong male role model in their lives. Marcus is falling apart, and I can only do so much as a single mother. You're not a single mother, you're living with their father. For now? But if Marcus can't get his life together? She let the threat hang in the air. After Sarah left, I called my friend Jake, who worked in construction management, to ask about Pinnacle Development Group. Never heard of them, he said after checking his industry contacts. That address you gave me. It's a mailbox rental place downtown. Evan, what are you getting mixed up in? Sarah's business opportunity was as fake as everything else about her. But her visit had revealed something important. She was getting desperate. The perfect life she had envisioned with Marcus wasn't materializing, and she was starting to look for exit strategies. I began researching Sarah's background more carefully, using resources from my engineering classes to conduct systematic investigations. What I discovered over the following weeks painted a picture of a woman whose entire life was built on deception. Sarah had lived in 3 different states over the past 10 years. In each location, she had become involved with married men who owned businesses or held professional positions. The pattern was always the same: an affair, financial manipulation, and eventually a pregnancy or threat of pregnancy that forced the man to choose between his existing family and her. I found court records from Nevada where she had filed paternity suits against 2 different men for the same child, ultimately losing both cases when DNA tests proved neither was the father. In Colorado, she had been arrested for welfare fraud after claiming to be a single mother while living with a man who was supporting her financially. Most disturbing of all, I found a restraining order filed against her in Arizona by a woman named Jennifer Walsh, who accused Sarah of stalking and harassment after Sarah's affair with Jennifer's husband ended. The climactic twist that confirmed my worst fears came when I discovered that Sarah was already laying groundwork for her next victim. Through social media investigation, I found that she was actively communicating with 3 different men on dating apps using photos that hid the fact that she had recently given birth to twins. Her dating profile described her as an entrepreneur and investment consultant who was looking for a mature man who could appreciate a sophisticated woman. There was no mention of Marcus, no mention of the children, no mention of any of the chaos she had created in our family. Sarah wasn't just a homewrecker. She was a professional predator who moved from family to family, leaving destruction in her wake while always positioning herself as the victim who deserved sympathy and financial support. The innocent twins sleeping in her apartment were just her latest tools for manipulation. And when they no longer served her purposes, she would abandon them just as readily as she had abandoned every other responsibility in her life. But this time she had chosen the wrong family to destroy. This time she was dealing with someone who understood that the best defense against a predator was to become a better predator yourself. The Child Protective Services call that ended this phase of my investigation came on a Friday morning. A caseworker named Ms. Rodriguez called to inform me that a complaint had been filed against Linda. We've received reports that Mrs. Linda Hayes has been making threatening statements about minor children and may be an unsuitable influence on family members, Ms. Rodriguez explained. What kind of threats? The complainant alleges that Mrs. Hayes has expressed wishes for harm to come to infant twins and has been coaching family members to interfere with custody arrangements. I knew immediately who had filed the complaint, and I knew exactly why. Sarah was trying to eliminate Linda from their lives entirely, ensuring that Marcus had no family support system outside of her control. The investigation would require weeks of interviews, home visits, and documentation. During that time, Linda would be prohibited from any contact with the twins, and any negative findings could impact her divorce settlement. Sarah had just escalated this war to a level that put innocent people at risk. She was about to learn that some battles once started can only end with complete victory or total destruction. And I had already decided which outcome I preferred. 2 years had passed since that nightmare birthday party, and the destruction Sarah had brought to our family had reached levels I never could have imagined. Marcus's once thriving plumbing business had collapsed completely. The alcoholism that started as weekend drinking had evolved into daily whiskey consumption that left him barely functional most days. I was finishing my delayed engineering degree through night classes while working full-time at Bradley Construction when Marcus showed up at my apartment on a rainy Thursday evening. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past 24 months. His clothes hung loose on his shrinking frame, and his hands shook slightly as he knocked on my door. "Evan, I need to talk to you about something important," he said, pushing past me into the apartment before I could refuse him entry. The twins, now 2 years old, were apparently becoming more than Sarah could handle. According to Marcus, Armani had developmental delays that required speech therapy, while Bentley showed signs of hyperactivity that made him difficult to manage. Sarah's threatening to leave town with the boys, Marcus said, collapsing into my chair like a man carrying the weight of the world. She says she can't handle being a single mother anymore. Single mother? I thought you two were together. We are, but Sarah says I'm useless. She's not wrong. He looked up at me with bloodshot eyes. I can barely keep myself together, let alone help with 2 toddlers. So what does this have to do with me? Marcus pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from his jacket pocket. She wants $50,000 to stay in town and keep the boys here. She's got some lawyer telling her she can get child support payments that high if she establishes residency in a different state. $50,000. Where would you get that kind of money? That's what I'm trying to figure out. My business is dead. I owe more on equipment loans than everything is worth. The only asset I have left is my partial claim to the house I used to share with your mother. I felt my stomach clench. Linda had managed to keep the family home through the divorce, but Marcus still held a financial interest due to the second mortgage complications. You're thinking about forcing a sale of Mom's house? I don't want to, Evan, but those are my sons. If Sarah takes them away, I'll never see them again. The desperation in his voice was real, but so was the manipulation. Marcus was asking me to help him destroy the last security my mother had in the world. There's another option, he continued. Sarah suggested it, actually. She thinks you could take temporary custody of the twins for a few months while we figure out the financial situation. What? Just temporarily, you're good with kids, you have a stable income, and your family. It would show Sarah that we can provide a support system for the boys without her having to move away. The audacity of the request left me speechless. After everything Sarah had done to our family, she wanted me to become a free babysitter for the children she was using as leverage against my father. Why would Sarah agree to that? She doesn't trust our family. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. She's changed her opinion about you. She thinks you're the most stable person in our family right now. That evening I received a phone call that explained Marcus's visit more clearly. Hello, Evan, this is Sarah. I think your father spoke to you about our situation. He mentioned something about temporary custody. I know this is an unusual request given our history, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about what's best for Armani and Bentley. Sarah's voice carried a tone of reasonable concern that I was learning to recognize as her most dangerous manipulation tactic. The boys need stability, and frankly, Marcus isn't providing that right now. His drinking has gotten worse, and I can't manage 2 toddlers with special needs on my own. Special needs? Armani isn't speaking at age level, and Bentley has behavioral issues that might be ADHD. They need consistent care and probably some professional intervention. And you think I can provide that? I think you're the only member of this family who has his life together. You're educated, you have a steady job, and you don't have the emotional baggage that Marcus and I carry. Sarah was painting herself as a concerned mother, making a difficult decision for her children's welfare. The performance was masterful. I've also been working on a business opportunity that could solve our financial problems, she continued. I have investors interested in a construction consulting firm. Your engineering background would be invaluable if you wanted to partner with me. What kind of construction consulting? Residential development projects, new subdivisions, commercial buildings, that sort of thing. The initial investment would be modest, but the potential returns are substantial. Sarah was offering me everything I had lost because of her actions, financial opportunity, family connection, and a chance to help innocent children caught in circumstances beyond their control. I need to think about this. Of course, but Evan, I want you to know that I deeply regret how things happened with your mother. I was young and stupid and I made terrible choices. I can't undo the past, but I can try to build something better for the future. After the call ended, I sat in my apartment, trying to process the complete role reversal Sarah was attempting. The woman who had destroyed my family was now positioning herself as the solution to problems she had created. But there was something else in her voice, something that suggested desperation beneath the confident sales pitch. I decided to visit Linda and get her perspective on the situation. Mom had rebuilt her life with impressive determination. She was working as a full-time administrative assistant at a medical clinic and had managed to keep the house through careful budgeting and part-time weekend work. Her health had stabilized, though she still took medication for blood pressure management. Sarah wants you to what? Linda's voice rose an octave when I explained the custody proposal. She claims it's temporary just until they get their finances straightened out. Evan, honey, you cannot trust that woman. She's planning something and it's not going to be good for anyone except herself. But what about the kids? If they really do have developmental issues, staying in a chaotic environment with an alcoholic father and a manipulative mother isn't going to help them. Linda sat down across from me at the kitchen table, her expression serious. Those children are not your responsibility. I know that sounds heartless, but you have to protect yourself. Sarah destroyed our family once. Don't let her do it again. What if I could document everything while they were in my care? If the kids are really being neglected or harmed, someone should be protecting them. And what if this is all a setup to make you legally responsible for children that aren't yours? What if she's planning to disappear and leave you holding the bag? Linda's concerns were valid, but the image of two small children caught in the middle of adult chaos kept haunting me. If Armani and Bentley were really struggling with developmental issues, they needed help that Sarah and Marcus clearly couldn't provide. The climactic twist that convinced me to agree to the temporary custody arrangement came when I returned to my apartment to find Sarah waiting in the parking lot with both twins in her car. "I'm sorry to ambush you like this," she said, "but I wanted you to meet them properly before you make your decision." Armani sat quietly in his car seat, his large eyes taking in everything around him without making a sound. Bentley was more active, trying to climb out of his restraints and reaching for everything within his grasp. "Armani, this is your big brother, Evan," Sarah said in a sing-song voice. "Can you say hello?" The little boy looked at me solemnly, but didn't speak. According to Sarah, he had a vocabulary of less than 10 words, far behind the normal development for a 2-year-old. Bentley, on the other hand, was clearly intelligent but seemed unable to sit still for more than a few seconds. His constant motion and difficulty focusing suggested that Sarah's ADHD concerns might be legitimate. "They're beautiful kids," I said, and I meant it. Whatever else was true about this situation, these were innocent children who deserved better than the chaos their parents had created. "Would you like to hold Armani? He's usually shy, but he might take to you." When Sarah placed the little boy in my arms, he immediately relaxed and laid his head against my shoulder. For the first time since I had met him, Armani seemed completely calm. "He likes you," Sarah said with what seemed like genuine surprise. "He doesn't usually do that with strangers." Looking down at this quiet little boy who had already experienced more family trauma than most adults, I made a decision that would change the trajectory of all our lives. Okay, I'll take temporary custody for 1 month while you and Marcus figure out your situation. Sarah's relief was so obvious it was almost comical. Thank you, Evan. You have no idea how much this means to me. But as I watched her drive away, leaving me standing in the parking lot with the commitment to take care of 2 toddlers I barely knew, I realized that Sarah had just made the biggest mistake of her manipulative career. She had given me access to evidence of neglect and abuse that would be impossible to hide or explain away. She had put the welfare of her own children in the hands of someone who had every reason to document their condition and every skill necessary to build an airtight case against her. Most importantly, she had voluntarily placed herself under the legal microscope of temporary custody arrangements that would require court oversight and social services monitoring. Sarah thought she was buying herself a month of freedom to pursue her next scheme. What she had actually done was hand me the rope I would use to hang her in court. The first night with Armani and Bentley in my apartment revealed the true scope of their neglect. When I attempted to give them dinner, I discovered that neither child knew how to use utensils properly. Bentley tried to eat spaghetti with his hands, while Armani simply stared at his plate as if he had never seen food presented in an organized way. Their clothes were expensive designer brands, but underneath the fancy outfits, both boys were significantly underweight. Armani's ribs were visible when I changed his shirt, and Bentley's arms looked thin for a healthy 2-year-old. Bedtime was even more revealing. Neither child had been taught a bedtime routine. They didn't know how to brush their teeth, had no concept of sleeping in their own beds, and showed signs of anxiety when separated from each other, even briefly. They'd been sleeping in the same crib. I wrote in the notebook I had started to document their condition. No individual beds, no established sleep schedule, no comfort objects like stuffed animals or blankets. Over the following weeks, I began photographing and documenting everything: the boys' lack of developmental progress, their behavioral issues, their fearful reactions to loud noises or sudden movements. Every piece of evidence painted a picture of children who had been physically provided for but emotionally and developmentally abandoned. I also reconnected with Jessica, who had completed her master's degree in psychology and returned to town to start her career. Our romantic relationship was complicated by everything that had happened, but she immediately understood the importance of what I was documenting. These children show classic signs of developmental neglect, she explained after spending an afternoon observing them. They're not being actively abused, but they're not receiving the stimulation and interaction they need for healthy development. Can you document that professionally? I can provide a preliminary assessment, but they would need full psychological evaluations from a licensed child psychologist for court purposes. Jessica helped me establish routines that began showing immediate improvements in both boys. Within 2 weeks of consistent meals, bedtime schedules, and interactive play, Armani spoke his first complete sentence. Evan read book. Bentley's hyperactivity decreased dramatically when he was given structured activities and clear boundaries. Instead of chaotic energy, he began showing signs of normal toddler curiosity and intelligence. The improvements are remarkable, Jessica noted. These children were starving for structure and attention. While focusing on the twins' immediate needs, I was also conducting a more systematic investigation into Sarah's background. Using professional databases available through my engineering work, I uncovered a pattern of fraud that stretched across multiple states. In Nevada, Sarah had filed false insurance claims after staging a car accident with a man she was dating. She had collected $15,000 in medical compensation for injuries that doctors later determined were self-inflicted. In Colorado, she had established 3 different identities to receive welfare benefits while working under the table as a cocktail waitress. When caught, she avoided prosecution by claiming to be a victim of identity theft herself. Most significantly, I found records from Arizona showing that she had abandoned a daughter from a previous relationship. The child, now 8 years old, was being raised by her paternal grandparents after Sarah disappeared without warning, leaving behind only debts and legal problems. She has another child. Jessica was horrified. She completely abandoned her own daughter. According to the court record, she hasn't contacted the child or provided any support in over 3 years. The grandparents have full custody and a restraining order preventing Sarah from attempting contact. This discovery changed everything. Sarah wasn't just a woman who made bad choices in relationships. She was a predator who used children as tools for financial manipulation and discarded them when they no longer served her purposes. I contacted Linda's divorce attorney, who confirmed that none of this information had come out during the divorce proceedings. Sarah had been using a false social security number and had hidden her entire criminal history from Marcus and the courts. If we can prove she committed perjury during the divorce proceedings, we can reopen several aspects of the settlement, the lawyer explained. More importantly, if she's been using false identification, she could face federal charges. The plan that began forming in my mind was comprehensive and devastating. I would document the twins' neglect and recovery, expose Sarah's criminal history, and protect Linda's interests in the divorce settlement. But I needed more evidence, and I needed Sarah to incriminate herself further. The opportunity came when Sarah attempted to manipulate me into a business partnership that was clearly fraudulent. "I've found the perfect property for our construction consulting business," she announced during one of her weekly phone check-ins about the twins. "A commercial lot that we can purchase below market value and flip to developers for a substantial profit. How much initial investment would be required? Only $25,000 from each partner. I've already secured the preliminary agreements." Sarah was asking me to invest money I didn't have in a business opportunity that almost certainly didn't exist. More importantly, she was attempting to commit investment fraud while I was documenting her interactions with her own children. I'd need to see the paperwork before making that kind of financial commitment. "Of course. Why don't you come to dinner this weekend? Marcus will be out of town at a job interview and we can discuss the details properly." The invitation to dinner was clearly an attempt at seduction. Sarah was planning to use the same manipulation tactics that had worked on Marcus, trying to cloud my judgment with personal intimacy while stealing my money. But I had a different plan for that dinner meeting. I arrived at Sarah's apartment with a hidden recording device and a prepared script of questions designed to get her to admit to her fraudulent activities. I also brought Jessica, introducing her as my girlfriend and business partner. Sarah's reaction to Jessica's presence was immediate and hostile. "I thought this was going to be a private business meeting." Jessica has a background in psychology and business management. If we're going to be partners, she'll need to understand the scope of the project. Throughout the dinner, I asked specific questions about the property investment, while Jessica observed Sarah's responses and body language. Sarah couldn't provide basic details like property addresses, zoning information, or legitimate contact information for the supposed developers. "The thing about construction consulting," Sarah said, switching tactics when her investment scheme fell apart, "is that success depends on personal relationships, trust, intimacy." She moved closer to me on the couch, placing her hand on my leg, while Jessica sat across the room. "Marcus and I have been having problems lately. He's drinking more and he's not meeting my needs as a woman." The attempted seduction was so blatant it was almost comical, but I let her continue while the recording device captured every word. "I think you and I could be good together, Evan. We understand each other. We both want more from life than what we've been given. What about the twins? The boys love you. They could have a real father figure for the first time in their lives. Marcus is hardly ever sober enough to take care of them properly." Sarah was offering to betray Marcus the same way she had betrayed Linda, confirming that loyalty and commitment meant nothing to her beyond immediate convenience. The climactic twist that ended my month of temporary custody came when Sarah attempted to kidnap the twins during what was supposed to be a scheduled visitation. I arrived at the designated meeting place, a public park, to find Sarah loading the boys into a car with out-of-state license plates. She had packed their belongings and was clearly planning to disappear without any legal process. "Sarah, what are you doing?" "Taking my sons somewhere they'll be safe and loved," she said, continuing to buckle them into car seats. "This town has nothing but bad memories for all of us." "You can't just take them. We have a custody agreement through the court." "I'm their mother. I can take them anywhere I want." But Sarah had made a critical mistake. The temporary custody agreement required court approval for any travel outside the county. By attempting to leave the state with the children, she was committing kidnapping under both state and federal law. I called 911 while blocking her car, with mine ensuring that she couldn't leave the parking lot before police arrived. When the officers took Sarah into custody 20 minutes later, they found false identification documents, $5,000 in cash, and detailed plans to establish a new identity in Oregon, where she had already rented an apartment under an assumed name. The twins were placed back in my temporary custody pending emergency court hearings, but this time, the arrangements included full legal protections and oversight from social services. Sarah had just provided me with everything I needed to destroy her completely, evidence of attempted kidnapping, fraud, perjury, and child endangerment. Her attempt to manipulate me had instead created an airtight legal case that would ensure she never had the opportunity to harm another family. But more importantly, she had shown me that Armani and Bentley were never safe with her. These children needed permanent protection, and I was the only person positioned to provide it. The war Sarah had started by destroying my family was about to end with her complete and total defeat. And unlike her previous victims, I had both the evidence and the determination to ensure that this time justice would be served completely. The emergency court hearing was scheduled for the following Monday, but I spent the weekend coordinating with multiple agencies to ensure that Sarah's arrest was just the beginning of a comprehensive legal assault that would expose every crime she had committed. I presented my evidence to Detective Morrison from the County Fraud Division. The documentation I'd gathered included bank records showing her theft from Marcus's business accounts, proof of her false identities, evidence of welfare fraud across 3 states, and recordings of her attempted investment scam. "This is the most comprehensive fraud case I've seen in 15 years, Detective Morrison said, reviewing the files I'd organized. "She's been running the same con for over a decade." "What kind of charges are we looking at?" "Federal charges for identity theft and wire fraud, state charges for child endangerment and attempted kidnapping, and probably charges in Nevada, Colorado, and Arizona once we coordinate with those jurisdictions." The IRS became involved when my evidence revealed that Sarah had been filing false tax returns using multiple Social Security numbers while hiding income from her various schemes. She owed over $40,000 in back taxes and penalties. Child Protective Services received Jessica's professional assessment, documenting the twins' neglect and developmental delays, along with photographic evidence of their condition when they first came to my care versus their improvement after 4 weeks of proper attention. But the most devastating evidence came from Arizona, where I'd contacted the grandparents who were raising Sarah's abandoned daughter. Margaret and Robert Chen agreed to testify about Sarah's pattern of child abandonment and fraud. They had been searching for her for 3 years, hoping to secure permanent custody of their granddaughter without the threat of Sarah returning to disrupt the child's life. "She disappeared in the middle of the night," Margaret explained during our phone conversation. "Left Amy with us for what she said would be a weekend visit and never came back. We've been raising her ever since." "Has she tried to contact Amy at all?" "Not once. No birthday cards, no phone calls, no support payments. As far as Amy knows, her mother died in an accident." The Arizona authorities were eager to finally locate Sarah for outstanding warrants related to fraud charges she had fled before trial. Her arrest in our county meant she could be extradited to face prosecution for crimes committed there as well. Marcus faced with losing his sons permanently and potential criminal charges as an accessory to some of Sarah's financial crimes finally broke down completely. He agreed to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for reduced charges and supervised visitation rights with the twins. "I never knew about the other identities," he confessed during his interview with Detective Morrison. "She told me she had some credit problems from her previous marriage, but I thought that was normal for someone who had been divorced." Marcus revealed that Sarah had forced him to sign documents he didn't understand, claiming they were insurance forms or business licenses. Many of those documents had actually been fraudulent loan applications and false identity paperwork. She would get angry if I asked too many questions. She said I didn't trust her, that I was trying to control her like her previous boyfriends had done. The manipulation had been systematic and thorough. Sarah had isolated Marcus from his family, and friends controlled his finances and gradually made him dependent on her approval for every decision. When Sarah's bail hearing was held, the prosecutor presented evidence of her flight risk and pattern of using false identities. Bail was denied, ensuring that she would remain in custody throughout the trial process. I petitioned the court for permanent custody of Armani and Bentley, supported by extensive documentation of their improvement under my care and professional evaluations confirming that returning them to Sarah would be harmful to their development. The custody hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later, giving me time to prepare the most comprehensive case possible. Jessica agreed to serve as a character witness and provide professional testimony about the twins' psychological well-being. Linda's divorce settlement was reopened based on the evidence that Marcus had been coerced into financial crimes and that Sarah had perjured herself during the original proceedings. Linda's attorney petitioned for full ownership of the family home and compensation for the medical expenses caused by the original betrayal. "The court will likely award you substantial damages," the attorney explained to Linda. "Sarah's criminal activities directly contributed to the financial and emotional harm you suffered." The most satisfying moment came when the federal prosecutor informed me that Sarah would face charges in 4 different states, with potential prison sentences totaling 20 to 30 years. "Women like this typically plea bargain to avoid the maximum sentences," the prosecutor explained. "But given the scope of her crimes and the number of victims, she's looking at significant prison time regardless." DNA tests ordered by the court revealed that Armani was Marcus's biological son, but Bentley was not. The father was apparently one of Sarah's previous victims, a married man from Colorado who had no idea he had a child. This discovery actually strengthened my custody case, as it proved that Sarah had been using both children as tools for manipulation rather than as beloved sons she wanted to protect. The biological father, when contacted by authorities, waived all parental rights and expressed support for my adoption petition. He was grateful that his son was being cared for by someone stable and had no interest in disrupting the child's life further. "I was married when Sarah and I had our affair," he explained during his deposition. "My wife and I worked through it, and we have our own children now. The best thing for that little boy is to stay with someone who actually wants to be his father." The trial proceedings took 8 months, during which time the twins continued to thrive in my care. Armani's speech development accelerated dramatically with proper intervention, and Bentley's hyperactivity was successfully managed through structure and consistency. Jessica and I grew closer as we worked together to provide stability for the boys. Our romantic relationship rekindled naturally as we built a family unit around 2 children who had never experienced real parental love. When the verdicts were finally announced, Sarah was convicted on 12 federal charges and 6 state charges. She received a sentence of 18 years in federal prison, with additional time to be served concurrently for state crimes. The climactic twist that provided complete closure came when Sarah attempted to appeal her conviction by claiming that Marcus had been the mastermind behind their crimes and that she had been a victim of domestic abuse. The recorded conversations I'd made during her seduction attempt were played in court, demonstrating clearly that she had been the manipulator rather than the victim. Her claims of abuse were contradicted by her own words describing Marcus as weak and easily controlled. The defendant's attempt to portray herself as a victim, the judge stated during sentencing, is contradicted by substantial evidence showing a pattern of predatory behavior targeting vulnerable men and children. This court finds no evidence of mitigation and every reason to ensure that she cannot harm additional families. Marcus received 3 years of probation and mandatory alcohol treatment. His visitation rights with Armani were supervised and conditional on maintaining sobriety. He would never regain custody, but he would have the opportunity to build a relationship with his son if he could overcome his addiction. My adoption of both twins was finalized 6 months after Sarah's sentencing. Armani and Bentley legally became my sons, with Jessica serving as their mother figure and Linda embracing her role as their grandmother. The boys retained no memory of their early trauma. To them, I had always been dad, Jessica had always been mom, and Linda had always been grandma. The chaos of their birth parents became just a sad story they would understand when they were older. The criminal investigation had recovered most of the money Sarah had stolen from various victims over the years. Marcus was able to pay back much of what he had taken from Linda, and the family home was secured without the threat of foreclosure. Sarah's reign of terror was over, but more importantly, 2 innocent children had been rescued from a life of manipulation and neglect. They would grow up knowing what real love and stability felt like, protected from the woman who had viewed them only as tools for her next scheme. Justice had been served not through revenge, but through careful documentation, legal process, and determination to protect the innocent victims of Sarah's crimes. The family she had tried to destroy had emerged stronger while she faced the consequences of a lifetime of predatory behavior. 3 years have passed since that terrifying night when Sarah tried to kidnap Armani and Bentley from the park, and the transformation in our lives has been nothing short of miraculous. The boys, now 5 years old, are thriving in ways I never could have imagined during those dark early days. Armani has not only caught up to his age-appropriate speech development, but has actually advanced beyond many children his age. His quiet, observant nature has revealed itself to be deep intelligence rather than developmental delay. He loves books, puzzles, and asking endless questions about how things work. Last month, his kindergarten teacher told me he's already reading at a 2nd grade level. Bentley's hyperactivity, which had seemed so destructive in his chaotic early environment, has channeled itself into creativity and leadership. He's the child who organizes playground games, builds elaborate block structures, and can focus intently on art projects for hours. What Sarah had dismissed as behavioral problems were actually signs of a bright, energetic child who needed structure and positive outlets. Both boys call me Dad naturally now, and they've never asked about their birth mother. To them, Jessica is Mom, Linda is Grandma Lynn, and this is the only family they've ever known. The stability we've provided has allowed them to develop into confident, happy children who trust that the adults in their lives will protect and care for them. Jessica and I married 18 months ago in a small ceremony at Linda's house, with the boys serving as ring bearers. Our relationship, which had been derailed by the original family crisis, grew into something deeper and stronger as we built a family together around 2 children who needed us both. Sometimes I think we needed them as much as they needed us. Jessica often says when we watch the boys playing in the backyard, that has become their kingdom of swing sets and sandbox adventures. She specializes now in family trauma recovery, using her experience with our situation to help other families heal from betrayal and manipulation. Her work has given meaning to the pain we all experienced, turning our personal tragedy into a way to help others facing similar crises. Linda has fully recovered both her health and her financial stability. The reopened divorce settlement provided her with enough compensation to pay off the house completely and build a comfortable retirement fund. More importantly, she's found peace and happiness as a grandmother who gets to be part of her grandchildren's daily lives. I never thought I'd be grateful for what Sarah did to our family. Linda confided in me recently while watching Armani help Bentley with a difficult puzzle. But watching these boys grow up healthy and loved seeing you and Jessica build something beautiful together, I realized that sometimes the worst things that happen to us clear the way for the best things. She's been dating Harold, a retired teacher who lost his wife to cancer 5 years ago. Their relationship is built on mutual respect, shared interests, and the wisdom that comes from having survived difficult losses. The boys adore him, and he brings a gentle grandfather energy to our extended family. Marcus served his probation successfully and has been sober for over 2 years. His relationship with Armani is careful and supervised, but it's real. They spend Saturday afternoons together working on simple construction projects in Linda's garage, with Marcus teaching his son basic tool skills and carpentry techniques. "I know I'll never be his real father," Marcus told me during one of our monthly check-ins. "You're his dad, and you've earned that. But I'm grateful you're letting me be part of his life." Marcus has rebuilt his life slowly and deliberately. He works for another plumbing company, now having lost his own business due to his addiction and poor choices. But he's reliable, honest about his mistakes, and focused on being the best man he can be with the second chance he's been given. He has no relationship with Bentley, whose biological father signed away all parental rights. This arrangement actually works better for everyone involved, as it allows Bentley to grow up without the confusion of divided loyalties or complicated explanations about his origins. I completed my engineering degree and now work for a firm that specializes in designing safe, functional spaces for schools and community centers. The experience of creating stability for my family led me to focus on environments that help children and families thrive. Every project I work on carries the lesson I learned from our crisis, that the spaces we create shape the lives we're able to live. The boys know they're adopted, and they know their story in age-appropriate terms. We've told them that their birth parents weren't able to take care of them properly, so they came to live with people who could give them the love and safety they deserved. "We're lucky," Bentley announced to his kindergarten class during a family presentation. "We got to pick our family instead of just getting stuck with whoever." His innocent wisdom perfectly captured what we've all learned, that family isn't about blood relationships or perfect circumstances, but about people choosing to love, protect, and sacrifice for each other. Sarah remains in federal prison and will not be eligible for parole for 12 more years. She has never attempted to contact the boys or express any interest in their welfare. For us, she has become simply a cautionary tale about how manipulation and selfishness ultimately destroy the manipulator more than their victims. Occasionally, I receive updates from the victims' advocacy groups that formed around her case. She destroyed at least 8 families during her criminal career, but all of those families have found ways to heal and rebuild. Several of the men she victimized have become advocates for fraud awareness, helping others recognize the warning signs of predatory manipulation. The woman in Arizona who was raising Sarah's abandoned daughter has become a friend through our shared experience. Amy, now 11 years old, is thriving with her grandparents and has never expressed interest in learning about her birth mother. Like our boys, she's found security in the family that chose to love her. "The best revenge against someone who tries to destroy your family," Linda observed recently, "is building a better family than they ever could have imagined. Our house is filled with laughter now instead of tension." Saturday mornings bring pancake breakfasts and cartoon marathons. Sunday afternoons mean family bike rides and trips to the park. The boys fight over toys and compete for attention in all the normal ways that healthy children do in secure families. Armani wants to be an engineer like me, spending hours drawing blueprints for elaborate tree houses and robot designs. Bentley wants to be a teacher like his grandpa Harold, already organizing pretend schools where he teaches his stuffed animals important lessons about sharing and kindness. They're growing up knowing that the adults in their lives will always tell them the truth, always put their safety first, and always be there when they're needed. The trauma that brought them to us has been transformed into the foundation of unshakable security. The life lesson that emerged from our family's crisis goes beyond simple justice or revenge. We learned that love is stronger than manipulation, that truth defeats deception, and that courage can rebuild what treachery destroys. But most importantly, we learned that the families we choose to build through conscious love and sacrifice are often stronger than the families we're born into through accident of biology. Sarah thought she could use children as tools to get what she wanted from the world. Instead, those children became the foundation of a family built on genuine love and commitment. She tried to destroy what we had so she could take what she wanted. Instead, she lost everything while we gained more than we ever thought possible. Family isn't about perfect people or perfect circumstances. It's about imperfect people making a conscious choice to love, protect, and sacrifice for each other every single day. It's about turning toward each other during the worst times instead of turning away. It's about believing that together we can overcome anything that tries to tear us apart. The boys are calling me from the backyard now, excited to show me the fort they've built from cardboard boxes and dreams. Jessica is laughing as she helps Linda prepare dinner for our Sunday family meal. This is what victory looks like, not the destruction of our enemies, but the creation of something beautiful from the ruins they left behind. Sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living well, loving deeply, and building something better than what was taken from you. In the end, that's exactly what we did. Have you ever had to protect someone you loved from a manipulative person who seemed impossible to stop? What gave you the strength to keep fighting when everything seemed hopeless? I'd love to hear your stories of how families can overcome betrayal and rebuild stronger than before. If this story touched your heart or reminded you that love really can conquer manipulation, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about real families facing real challenges and finding their way to happiness. Thank you for taking this journey with our family. And remember that no matter what you're facing, there are people who will stand with you and help you rebuild. Until next time, keep choosing love over fear and never give up on the people who matter most.